On today's podcast, we are joined by a well-known and talented game artist. Welcome to Tabletop Shop. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. I am one of your hosts, Cody Pennington, and today we're going to be chatting with another special guest. This individual is most well known as an artist in the board game industry, but his ventures also include game design, writing, and video game concept art. Please welcome to the shop, Mr. Andrew Bosley. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Cody? Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's just start it off easy, because I'd like to know, and I'm sure the people want to know, where do you call home?
Well, gosh, where do I call home? I live in northern Arizona.
Okay.
I'm from California, but we claim, my wife and I, we adopted North Carolina when we lived out there, and that's probably where most of our hearts are is North Carolina, which we loved very much. But we do love it here in Prescott, Arizona. But yeah, that is our current home right now.
Okay, life just kind of moved you over down south?
Yeah. Well, most of our married life, we lived quite away from family. My family stayed. Most of my family was in California or on the West Coast and Southern California. When I went to school, we were in Northern California. Then we moved to North Carolina, and my father passed away while we were in North Carolina, and illnesses and family, troubles or anything like that. And we were like, we're just really far away. It was nice. I mean, it was nice to kind of grow our family as just our family. But there were opportunities missed to be around extended family. And so when I was leaving, when I decided to go freelance after working in video games, it was, we weren't looking to go to California, and Arizona was pretty close, and so we just ended up here.
Huh. It's interesting. I feel like I'm in either the opposite track or maybe just an earlier stage of that journey, because my wife and I, we've been married just a couple of years now, but we've been thinking about moving from Oregon out to like Idaho or somewhere around there, which would actually be kind of more away from family, but who knows? Maybe it would all wrap back around eventually.
Well, it's a neat thing. I mean, we this is not a parenting advice podcast, but
For now,
any of our friends, we always, or not parenting, but just life. We really enjoyed, for at least early in our marriage, getting away from family. So like just our identity was just us, me and my wife, and our family and our kids. We needed to rely on each other a lot more when we were away from family. And then it also really built up our confidence in ourselves. So then when we did move back, and now I have my mom and my in-laws all live 5 minutes away from us. We don't really feel like, like everything, we're still very independent. We all do our own things, but we of course love to get together when we do. And so I think it's a good, healthy thing to get away from family some distance, just so you have some space to grow as an immediate family.
Yeah. And I guess what point in your life do you feel like that dynamic shifted back to maybe moving back closer to the rest of the fam?
Well, our kids were getting older, and so it's that certainly made it easier. We certainly had grown as adults and lived our own life, and it was its own, had our own traditions and things like that. And then I think our kids were old enough that it was like, okay, they're really missing grandparents and cousins and things like that. And so, I mean, it all worked out perfectly, but it also was, I can't separate it from the career change that I was making at the time, but
sure.
But it was definitely a good time for the kids to make sure that they weren't missing family so much. So, but it also, at the same time, that distance made us stronger as a family too. So,
Well, on the subject of family, I understand that you are a big Attica fan, and you had quite the tournament with your wife, it sounds like.
This is true. This is true. Yeah. Yeah,
I
we
may
had.
have been reading up on some of your blog posts, but I'm curious if you wanted to elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Well, so my wife and I, my wife loves board games just like I do, but she doesn't really like to learn new games. So we play the same games a lot. Um, and so over the 22 years that we've been married, we will go through cycles where we'll play one game for a little while, and then we'll stop and we'll play something else for a little while. I mean, like, but for years, like, or certainly 6 months. It might be just guillotine or uh, whatever. And Attica, we actually had for a very long time, and it just sat on our shelf for a long, long time. And but we had played it, we knew we liked it, and so we decided we'd pull it out. And we both really felt like we were better than the other at Attica, like, and it really felt like kind of crucial to our marriage to decide who really was the best. And
Well,
so
yeah, you have to know.
yeah, so we decided to do we decided to do a 50 game tournament at first, which my wife won. At which time it seemed natural that it should actually the more appropriate competition would be a uh, best 2 out of 3 of 50 game tournaments. So
Well,
she had technically
naturally.
won. Yeah, she had won the first one. So we needed to have another 50 game tournament. And if she won that one, then she, of course, would be the champion. But I, in the end, won that one. And so we were
Mm.
down to the last 50 games. And we had all of this written down on paper, and we were going good. And I was actually ahead in that third set of 50 games, but we took about a 6 month break at one point. And when we came back, my wife spontaneously declared that because of that break, that competition was void, and so she ripped up the paper scores. Um, and that was a bit harsh and a bit crazy. And so I said fine, but I made a permanent chalkboard scoreboard that was the new thing that she couldn't rip up. Technically, she could erase it, but I would take pictures occasionally to see the progress, so I could it could never be a documentation error. And so in the end, we started all brand new again. And so we started from scratch, did the 50. I can't remember who won the first one, but basically we needed to go to a third 50 again. And in the end, I won the tournament. And it was very healthy for our relationship for that, to go through that whole process. But yes,
Yeah. Well, you need to lead the household, right? So you need to lead in Attica as well.
this is true. Yeah. Uh, I do think we probably I am I do not doubt that we are probably the people. Our family has played Attica. Me and my wife have played Attica more than anybody else in the world, perhaps besides the designer. So we feel pretty good about our record with it.
Uh, did you see that there's a re-implementation of the game called it was like Telegraph Office or something?
U.S. Telegraph, yes,
Yeah, that. Have you given that a
yes.
try?
I haven't. We're kind of purists, so we only play that one. We actually wore out that copy, the original copy that we had. We didn't really wear it out, but frankly it smelled, and so uh, and I'm a strict non-sleever of cards, and so this is a natural result is that the cards started to smell and the game itself smelled. So we have shelved that one. We have kept it for posterity, but we bought. I had to go on BGG and on a marketplace and find that old edition, and
Hmm.
we got that one, and we finished the tournament with a new copy. So yeah, but so it just doesn't interest the reskinning, the new theme doesn't particularly interest me. So it was an easy pass on that one.
Sure. Do you think there's another tournament in your future? Like, does this need to get rehashed?
Not for Attica. I mean that one was definitive, and so I actually. So the funny thing is because my wife doesn't like to play doesn't like to learn new games very often. Um, and she just wanted to play Attica all the time. I said, we're going to do this tournament. This was the other part, is when we're done with this tournament, we're not playing Attica ever again. But
Whoa.
we have played it. But the whole point was we need to play, we need to learn another game. And so this was kind of going to force the situation, uh, make it so we need to play a different game. So we will be definitely doing more tournaments. I don't know if we're going to do. There's probably only one or two other games that would be appropriate to do, like a 150 game tournament again, that we played enough that we're like. But I don't know if there'll ever be a game like Attica for us, um, like that. So we would probably. We love tournaments. We've always done tournaments as a couple. But it would probably be something like a mix. Like we might play, I don't know, best of three on one game, and then we'd switch to another game, and we make elaborate competitions, as is obvious with that last one. But it would probably be a collection of different games.
I see. So less a one game tournament, more perhaps a gauntlet.
Yeah, definitely that.
I like that.
I hope we'll do a long one someday again, but I don't know if Guillotine is one of those that we always come back to. But it's like I don't know if Guillotine's a really cool game. I like it, but I don't know. It's not. It's about the what cards you draw and all that sort of stuff. It's a little bit
Sure.
less strategic, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, are there any other games that either you or your wife or both of you want to play that you haven't played yet?
I don't think my wife thinks about that very often. I do for sure. I'm much more in the like. Not only, I mean, we both love games, but I'm actively looking for new games. She isn't. So I would say for me, there's lots. Gosh, I could several on that list. There's a lot of them they draw my attention just because of the beautiful art that might be in it. So like
Sure.
one game that I bought but I haven't had a chance to play yet is an old one called Coimbra that Chris Quilliam did the artwork for. There's another one I think it's Ian O'Toole that did the artwork for, but I might be wrong. Called Weather Machine that I can't. I really want to play, but it's very very meaty. It's something like I get the impression it's many hours long, and so that's
Whoa.
definitely one my
Okay.
wife would never play. I'm excited for Expeditions. Scythe is probably my favorite game of
Mm,
all time. Um,
same. Hey, respect, brother. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah. So I'm excited for Expedition, though. I don't know if it'll have the same. I have my questions whether it'll have the same appeal to me as Scythe does, but without a map like Scythe has, which I love.
Hmm.
But let's see. Gosh, any other ones that are really on my list? There's so many great games out there. I might get excited for lots of them, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely a judge a game by its cover type of guy, unfortunately. And so if it needs to it needs to appeal to the artist side of me as well a little bit. But there's lots of
Sure.
those. There's lots of those.
Yeah, well, I mean, that really seems to be a modern phenomenon of the board game industry. I was recently reading an article that was an interview with Martin Wallace, and he was discussing how when he first started designing games, you really didn't have to have good art for a
Hmm.
game. Like, it just didn't really matter. It wasn't really that competitive in that realm. But nowadays, like, if your game does not have good art, it may never see the light of day.
Well, it's I'm biased, but I definitely like games to have good art. I mean, it's an interesting it's an interesting thing that I take for granted for sure, and it's brought some recent games have made me go, why do I think games have to be illustrated? Things like Ark Nova and Terraforming Mars and Earth. There's a lot of photography and things
Hmm.
to put in. Not always the best. Sometimes those don't feel like they've been put together
Yeah.
a great way, but it's still the images themselves might not be anything wrong with the photography in it. But I look at that and I go, yeah, I mean that's certainly an option. So I shouldn't take it for granted. But I do love I love something beautifully illustrated when I can get my hands on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, same. Yeah, I kind of wonder about. Obviously, you're most well known probably for Everdell. I mean, there's a few other big ones in there, but I am curious if Everdell had a different artist or just not as high quality of art, if it would have performed as well. Because I mean, that's when someone sees the cover, you're like, "What is that? I want to play that. Can I play that?"
Uh, are you asking me if it?
I was more amusing, but I'm curious, perhaps jumping into Everdell, what the I guess what that process was like. Did like how involved were you with the I guess the production of any of the story within it, or like was there much expectation of how the game would perform before it was all finalized?
I got a chance to play it before anything, so I was familiar with the game, but the world building side of it was actually quite minimal. If Yeah, I'd say it was pretty minimal, if not non-existent, before I started working on art. We knew what the theme was. We knew that it was going to be critters in the forest, and we knew that the resources. We knew what type of resources we were going to be working with, and so okay, buildings would probably use those sort of things and whatnot for as construction material. And I think that's really about it. We knew that like constructions were going to be paired with critters, so we knew we were going to see critters in the construction, the appropriate critter in the construction illustration.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still really just gameplay, influenced by gameplay, and that's really it. So there wasn't a whole lot of world building. I mean, as far as like fully planned and written out, like this is what's going on here. It's not like we knew, the history of Everdell at that point at all. So uh, I was definitely given lots of freedom to explore it how I wanted to. I certainly was, checking back with my art director Dan May, who was also the graphic designer for the game, really talented artist. And between the two of us, we kind of figured out all of the stuff. But I think it was I really feel like I had the luxury of doing world building, I guess, primarily just as I was creating artwork. Um, and and then things were added on top of that later on after the first game. Then James also was involved in creating the world near the end of what we were doing, I think, or maybe during all of this, but I wasn't seeing it. But by the
Hmm.
time the game was released, there was a lot more story involved in it, and then as the other games came along, more and more was put into that. um, but I think with the base game, it was really kind of a fair amount was on my shoulders to try to infuse a feeling of a world and a immersive setting, but not a lot of documentation or anything or formal storytelling was part of it.
That's interesting. So, was there perhaps a fair amount of the story that was actually derived from the art that you already produced? Like maybe that gave inspiration for any of the histories or personas seen?
It's possible. I mean, I wish I should know the answer to all of these, but to some of this, but and James and I are good friends. But I honestly was so focused on working on the artwork, and he was working on the gameplay. I know in the end, he was ultimately he is also a writer. And so in
Mm.
the end, he ultimately was the one who created the lore for the world, but we never really talked about like how much everything influenced each other. By the end of the, I don't know, by Spirecrest, the Spirecrest expansion, uh, by New Leaf, and I think those, there was a lot for me to go off of, and actually part of like the art briefs that I would get, like this person is this, and there's a little bit more a lore attached before I started drawing anything, but up to that point there wasn't. So I'd like to think that there was a decent amount that the art informed the lore and the world building pretty actively at the beginning, and then it probably reversed a little bit more near the end.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine there'd be a pretty close tie mixed in there just by the fact that what you produce on the page there, like what is seen, is what people are going to interpret as the story. I mean, there's the obviously the notes within the book. I'm sure there's lore you can explore through other sources, but I mean, I guess that's the thing about Everdell that I also really love about Everdell is it's very easy to see the story just within the art, within the pages, within the cards. Perhaps compared to Tapestry, because you worked on Tapestry as well. I
Hmm.
feel like there's an interesting comparison between the two of them because
Yeah,
Tapestry, the game, I feel like the game more largely resides just in the main board where I
yeah,
don't know if there's really any art in the main board other than perhaps some graphic design,
yeah,
but at that point, it really comes down to the mechanisms. Whereas Everdell, there's plenty of mechanisms you're working within, but everything is much more in your face visually with all the cards,
uh-huh.
the tree and whatnot.
Yeah. Tapestry for sure. Like it's interesting. That was an actively, this sounds weird, but almost anti world building in there, because it wasn't the whole point of the world building in the sense that you are creating a defined culture and a defined civilization that followed a certain path, and there's a history, an implied history that is there. Tapestry, we didn't want to have that because that would change from game to game, and your civilization, one game you'd have a choice between two civilizations, and the next game they're two completely different ones. So if they were too, if a history was too baked into the game in the cards and things like that, then it would take away from the 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 gaming world building that you were doing on the fly every time you played the game, and which would be fresh
Hmm.
and new each time. So we purposely were trying to avoid like repeated characters. We want to have diversity of characters represented on the cards, but nothing that would be consistent that would make you go, oh, I see this character seems to go, in and out of these cards. Like we didn't even want any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a different process, and I very much enjoyed that. But I must say, I mean, I love world building, so there was you know, that was also missed at the same time.
Yeah. What was it like incorporating the references to other material inside of Tapestry? Because I understand that Tapestry, I believe, holds the record for it's like the most references included in a board game. So take for example I think it's the Tank Factory card. There's a little scythe mech in the
Oh,
background. Uh, then there's the, the
yeah,
the dystopian card features the Euphoria buildings. So I guess what was that like trying
yeah.
to fit everything in there in a subtle way?
Well, Jamie loves Easter eggs, so that was something that, and he's very open to let. I mean, he had some very specific things that he wanted. Uh, I mean, yeah. So there were several things. It was like, I'd love to have this game represented, in here. I don't know how often he said it needed to be in a certain card. I don't think, or a certain piece of artwork. I
Hmm.
don't think that happened really ever. Um, he'd want his cats in there, so I found ways to put his cats in there. He wanted the arch in St. Louis in there because that's where he lives, and so we got that in. on a tapestry card, um, and then he had some cultural things that he liked that were more subtle that we put on the board, and we put on lots of tiles. And then he just said, Andrew, kind of put wherever you feel free to put stuff in there if you want to, and even saying like, I'm only giving you X number of Easter eggs. I want you to put more, but basically do what you want. And so there's lots of references in tiles, individual tiles to Lord of the Rings and Star
Mm,
Wars, and I think there's a Firefly reference in there somewhere.
nice.
I put some of my own personal things are on the cover. Um, Anyway, it was a lot of fun. But in the case of Jamie and referencing things from his games, those were things that sometimes Euphoria, for example, I haven't played, so that was one he definitely was like, yeah, put that in there. But
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I think I might have had the idea of in the tank in one of the cards that has like mechs in there. In fact, I was just playing Tapestry recently and had that Tapestry card, and I can't remember which one it was, um, but yeah, I mean, I was already a huge fan of Scythe, and so I love putting his mechs in whenever I can. So
Was there then an explicit directive to just incorporate as many Easter eggs as possible, or is it more just like, yeah, have fun, throw in what you want?
I think at the very end, I mean, I knew ahead of time that he was going to want to have them in there. Process wise, it made more sense to do them at the very end in most cases. Um, I think it was only in the tapestry cards that there was a select few that Jamie was like, that he was like, these need to be like, we can't miss these. So his cats were one of those. I had to plan that out where it would be appropriate for them, and the arc, where the arch, where would that go? But most of the stuff kind of happened at the very end, and most of it takes place in the tiles that you're putting down on the map. So they're very subtle, in fact, extremely small in many cases.
Yeah.
And I think he just said, I would love it if I could have, here's a list of 6 or 7 I'd love for you to have. And then I would love it if you put some more in, but you can do that how you want to. So those just came in at the very end, and he let me kind of run with that on my own.
I like that. I like that. So I guess was that a lot of fun working with Stonemeyer Games then? I mean, that sounds pretty flexible in what you were able to do.
Stonemeyer is Jamie. I mean, Stonemeyer is Jamie, and that's the only person at Stonemeyer I really work with, and he is
Wow.
wonderful to work with. He's yeah, he's very generous with artists and the freedom that he allows his artists to the process that we go through. So no, I jump at any chance I can to work with Jamie when those opportunities come.
I like that. I also saw the See Europa by Mech. I
Mm-hmm.
forget what exactly that was. It was like a BGG special for artists doing a crossover rendition from other games, right?
Yeah, they do an artist series of prints where different board game artists will do their own take on different games in the industry. And so I did the first one I did was a few years back, and that was Scythe. Yeah, the See Europa by Mech. I really loved doing that one. I
Yeah.
love travel posters, and that was kind of the. I think that was their intention with this series, that they would all be a little more travel poster like, and so they pitched that to me, and I loved it because I love that style. Not all the prints by all the different artists ended up looking like that, but that's what and then a second one I did, they commissioned me to do another one about a year ago, and that one I did for Pandemic, and I kind of did the same
Mm.
sort of thing, and more of a travel poster theme for that. But yeah, that first one for Scythe was lots of fun.
I don't think I've seen that one. Is that like See the World by Virus or something?
No, it's what I can't remember what the tagline I had. See the world, save the world, I think it was, and it was basically
Ah,
like, you're almost more like a a recruiting, poster for the the Corps of Engineers or something like that. Some sort of
Oh, okay.
volunteer. It was less about travel. It was more about volunteer and help and be a part of this movement. This effort to eradicate disease in the world. And so there were battleships in it, but it was like there was a scientist in a hazmat suit, carrying like a cooler of stuff, and it looks very like, okay, we've got some urgent disease to cure, and we've got the support of all of the military behind us, helping it. And anyway, it was lots of fun, but very much a, you know, more of a recruitment style poster from back in the day, which is fun.
I like that. I especially love the World War II era, like subtle propaganda, like join the U.S. Army, fight for your country posters. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
really like that style.
yeah, those are really neat.
Well, being an artist, I imagine you largely have control over your own work day. Maybe I'm making too many assumptions there, but I guess what does a normal work day look like for Andrew Bosley?
Um, I do have a lot of control over that. I mean, like when I mean, I'm certainly affected by my deadlines that I have, and so it's a lot. I'm very strict with my schedule. Um, I start at a very specific time and then at a very specific time. That's as my wife knows very well. It is not hard for me to go to work. It's easy for me to stay, and because this is just stuff I like to do. So for the sake of a good balance, I always end at 6 o'clock and come in and have dinner with the family, and we all hang out and stuff. But during the day, the work and stuff, like, yes, there's flexibility. I can decide if this project is a priority today, and I like that process. That's nice. I mean, I schedule out my week, every hour of my week. Um, on Sundays, every Sunday night, I sit down and I go, okay, what projects am I working on? Okay, what am I wanting to accomplish with each project by the end of this week? Okay, then I schedule where those fit in on any given day, hour of the week, and so I'll start a Tuesday, and I know what I had planned to do, but I'll maybe my client sent me an email going, is there any way you can get this to me, a little bit faster? And I'm like, okay, sure. And
Hmm.
I'll move things around and get those things done. Um, so it's nice to have the flexibility. I very much enjoy that part of a freelance life. But it is still very, very structured and very strictly observed times,
Yeah.
uh, which is good for me and works for me.
Is that usually pretty daunting on Sunday, like before the week starts, planning everything out, or is it more of a comfort just to be able to sort of compartmentalize everything away?
I love it. I love planning. I love being as organized as I can. So I actually really enjoy. I my I don't know if it's truly when I don't plan, the week is much less productive for me. So, and I don't know if that's just a mind game I play where I just go, well, I didn't have anything planned. I didn't plan anything for this week. So what am I supposed to be doing today? I don't know. Well, then I guess it's not that big a deal. There might be part of that, but it also, I think, is having that structure. It keeps me on task. When I write something down, I feel an obligation to get it done. So Sundays, it's not daunting for me at all. I very much enjoy it, because I'm seeing, okay, especially when I've got a large handful of projects and I'm desperately wanting to make progress on each one of them. I go, okay, I can get this. Sometimes I'm frustrated that I'm not able to get more than I like on a Sunday. I'm fairly ambitious about what I think I can get done during a week, and I'm usually disappointed at the end of the week that maybe I didn't get as much done. But I'm pretty good these days at going, okay, yes, it would be great if you can get 20 illustrations done this week, but you're not going to. So let's just put this in. And so anyway, it's I like that part of my process. The planning is something very helpful to me, and I enjoy it.
How early in life did you know that you wanted to pursue art as a career?
Very early. I kindergarten at least.
Wow.
I knew for sure by kindergarten I wanted to be an artist. Yeah, it was kind of a one track mind for most of my life. I can't imagine doing anything uh, else. Um, so yeah, very early.
Was
It,
there
it
any like stereotypical resistance from family or parents for anyone being a creator?
No, it's no. My parents were very supportive. None of them were artists. My grandmother was an amateur artist, and maybe my mother on my mom's side. So maybe my mother was uh, understanding of that. I don't know, but no, they were very supportive. Uh, I never felt at any time like, oh, that's. I mean, they might have been thinking about it. I mean, I've got a son that for a time was thinking he really wanted to go into musical theater, and I was like, and you know, I've got a jazz musician for a father-in-law, and I'm a professional artist. But I was going, can you actually have a job doing musical theater? Like, I mean, and unless you're some huge big name, can you do that? So I maybe they were thinking that just like I was for my son, but they didn't. They certainly didn't show it. They were very encouraging. Yeah, no, they were fantastic. I in fact, there were lots of wise counsel that my father in particular gave to me, and at the time I was maybe a more stubborn youth that was like, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. But in the end, it was like, yeah, there were some wise things, particularly to art, like just some thoughts in my art process. And he wasn't an artist in any way, but there was some. I mean, it wasn't like you should shade things this way. It wasn't like that, but it was just some good practices that were purely about uh, art that he was able to see and point out. And eventually, I learned to respect many of his insights, even if it wasn't his passionate, for himself.
Hmm. If it's not too personal, are there any of those insights that you can share, or are they just more like very specific to like individual pieces of art?
They were pretty specific, not to individual pieces of art, but it was like, I mean, the one that stands out to me the most, and it seems so silly to call back, but it just what was he was really excited for me to pursue this career, and at the time I think when you know at the time that I was talking to him about this particular thing, I was interested in doing children's books and as a career. And so he was like, well, you should really be practicing how to be consistent, design a character and consistently illustrate that character, but in different poses. Like learn how to make sure that likeness is consistent from one page to the other. And I probably saw that at the time as like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's fine. I'll deal with that another time or whatever. I want to do what I want to do. But I remember specifically coming back and going, I wish I had followed that then. I wish I had put more thought into that at that time, and it would have been a stronger thing, a stronger aspect of my art, moving forward if I had considered that more seriously at the time. But coming out of it, I was less resistant to the thoughts that to the advice my father gave to me, which was good.
Well, you mentioned wanting to do children's books. I guess when did you first get involved with doing art for board games specifically?
It was a long process, but that really, when I wanted to be in this, I mean, not that when I was aware that there was even an opportunity to work, and do stuff in full time in board games, really only I think I became aware of that around the time of Everdell.
Hmm.
I had done a couple games before then, but they were at the time I was doing uh, I was just doing concept art and video games still, even though I was freelancing. I was continuing that profession. Um, and so the board games Mission Red Planet and Citadels, as fun as they were to work on, they were like just a break from my concept work.
Huh.
It wasn't until Everdell came along that I was like, okay, if I'm going to take this job on, which was a big job, it was very very large right from the start. Even just the base game with so many cards, and so I was like, okay, uh, if I can do this and I can do this fast enough, this could be actually a career. I could spend more time in this industry, and then after Everdell was successful, fortunately, more opportunities came, and I was able to kind of keep that pattern, and it's been wonderful ever since. So, but yeah, it wasn't on my mind at all until maybe 6 years ago, and then it became a reality only after Everdell.
Hmm. Well, I am in no way a particularly artistic person myself, at least in the visual sense. But I do aspire to game design. I love designing custom games, even if that extends to like D&D style role playing games.
Uh huh.
Um, and it's pretty easy to paint in the board game industry that's extremely difficult for a new designer, I suppose, to elbow their way in. But I'm curious, do you, from an artist perspective, do you think it's the same level of difficulty for any aspiring board game artist out there, or is that maybe a little bit more welcoming?
I think it's a lot more welcoming. We have a lot of great artists in the board game industry, but not a lot. There's only a really quite a few that do it all like that. That this is primarily what they're doing, and that's not required. Like you don't need to be a board. You don't need to only work in board games to do anything in board games. But there's just not the concentration of artists in the board game industry as there is in video games and in animation and things like that. So when any artist is going to school, or even if they're not going to school and they're thinking, what are my career options? There are some things that are very obvious, and then there's board games, which is not obvious at all,
Yeah.
especially if you're not a board gamer yourself. So there's just not a lot of artists trying. Not in comparison to other industries, there's not a lot of artists trying to get those jobs. So uh, I, I try to encourage a lot of artists in the video game industry to come over to board games because there's a lot of really really talented artists there.
Hmm.
But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, I should stop telling everybody, or I won't have any jobs anymore because the better artists
Yeah.
will come in. Um, but no, it's a very and it's definitely for illustrators that are first starting out. I mean, this in comparison to so many. I mean, I've worked in all different areas of illustration, different industries. Books, magazines. Uh, I mean, tons of things in illustration. And there are so many gatekeepers, so many. It's a very hard. Most traditional illustration industries are very very hard to get into. Uh, Very much like what game design would be for designers in this industry. Um, but for art, yeah, it's like so like I occasionally mentor young illustrators, young artists that
Hmm.
are trying to find their way into this industry, and I'm like, board games, totally get into board games. Because the other thing that's really nice is there's no like, I mean, there's how many different game publishers are there, and how many different games. Like, it's rare even to find a game publisher that's like, this is the style of art that we do our games in. And usually if that's the case, like they've hired already an artist for that. So like Leader Games, like
Yeah.
has Kyle Farron, and Kyle's incredibly talented artist. So they've got this consistent style for their games, but most of the time that's not the case. So it's not like only certain artists with certain styles will make it as a board game artist. Like there's room for any style, and so probably more important in my mind sometimes when I'm teaching, people is just actually to be a good professional, a professional artist. Your style doesn't matter so much. Your skill is important, but I mean, if you want to do well, like be just a good professional, and then also be a good artist, and there'll be a place for you in board games.
Do you foresee that changing over the next few years? Like perhaps more and more people in the video game industry coming over to the board game industry?
Uh, I don't know. Probably. I'm sure it will to some degree. I think as board game publishers continue to value artists more and see that good art increases their sales, then they are more willing to pay artists uh, what would be a reasonable rate. Um, that's not always the case in board games. Board games for sure have less of a budget than say video games. So what I could charge, uh, I charge X number for an illustration in board games, and I almost certainly could charge double that in video games.
Hmm.
Um, so until that changes, it would be a very hard transition for most artists. But at the same time, it's extremely competitive. I mean, much more competitive in video games. And so there's a lot of artists that just don't have jobs, like they can't get those projects. So I assume it will, um, but it's not as easy of a change. I think board game publishers raising rates to attract more artists is a slower process, because a lot of publishers are just are single people with a designer, that decides they want to make, they're going to publish their own game, and so I need to hire an artist, and they're paying for that out of their pocket, and that's really hard to spend money that way. So I think it'll be slow, but I hope I expect it will change over time, and because the board game industry continues to just get bigger and bigger, it'll have draw more attention as time goes on, I assume.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, I guess, just what happens in
Yeah,
all of those dynamics in the coming years.
yeah,
Well, the final subject I wanted to broach is the Smoking Bones Travel Company,
yes,
which I had no knowledge of but before, really just until exploring your blog a bit more. For our audience who probably hasn't aren't really aware of what that is, would you like to explain it?
sure. So the Smoking Bones world is something that I've been working on for almost 10 years now. And originally it was something that was going to be just a series of books that I was writing, certainly heavily illustrated books. And so it's something so the gist of the story is it's basically a series about a travel company called the Smoking Bones Travel Company that takes people to the magical places of the world, and those magical places are disappearing. And the captain of the Smoking Bones Travel Company, the owner, is particularly passionate about saving and finding, recording, and promoting those magical places, especially considering that they're disappearing for some reason. And so the stories follow his adventures as he takes people to these magical places, and then a much bigger arc is what is causing these magical places to disappear, and the efforts he takes to fix that problem. Um, it's a story that I've been very, very passionate about for a very long time, but relevant to board games at this point. I'm excited because I pitched this world to Jamie Stegmeyer with
Ooh.
Stonemeyer Games a few years back, and he was very excited about it. I had actually already talked to a very good. I had actually previous to that already been working with a designer um, on a game for this, and then with Jamie's excitement, he was excited to take this on. So he's paired with this designer and we've agreed. He's taken on the project to do a series of games set in this world. And so I can't say too much about it other than that, but really really excited. And so the world is being developed. The first book is being written and published. It's free on my website. It can be, you can read it right now. The start of book one, and while in tandem, I'm working on the game art and helping with game design and things like that for the series of games that will be coming out in the future. So it's really really very exciting for me.
That is exciting. I was actually going to ask if there was some sort of eventual game in the works. I had no idea that Stonemaier was already involved.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that is. I mean, like I
is
said,
there?
it was originally going to be just books, and books is about as daunting to get in. Writing and being known in books is about as daunting as, or more so than designing in the board game industry. But so to be able to make this and have some legs through board games and still continue in tandem to write the books is an incredible opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah. Is there any? I know you can't get into too many specifics, but is there any sort of time frame we can expect or imagine to maybe see the first game come out?
I wish I could. Anything that I know what the timeline is, but there are still some things that make that flexible. And so, out of respect to all parties involved, I would it would be uncomfortable, or it would be inappropriate for me to share even what I expect will be the timeline. And as if you know Jamie's games, like, he likes to keep things pretty tight to the what is it, tight tight to the vest, tight to the chest. What
Tight,
anyway?
tight to the chest, close to the vest,
Close to the vest.
something
That's
like
it.
that. Yeah.
Close to the vest. He likes to keep those things close to the vest until they're published. I mean, even that he was willing to say, "I'm working on a series of games with Andrew Bosley in the Smoking Bones world." As ahead, like, I assumed we were going to be waiting to make that announcement, like, until he was ready to say the game is ready for pre-order.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's that we're saying that now, and there is still some lead time. That was a neat thing for me. But yeah, unfortunately, that's something we're keeping pretty close to the vest together for the time being.
That's the for our audience and myself. I guess we can just leave that for our imaginations and our expectations to slowly grow.
Well, I will say, this is a shameless plug. There is, while I don't share any of those details in other circumstances, I for people who are interested in this and would like to see more than just wait until something happens. Through my Discord and my Patreon, I'm sharing a lot of artwork and new stuff that I'm making that is part of this world on a regular basis. And so and I can tell those stories and talk a little bit more about what's going on. So if people are interested, there's definitely ways to keep a closer tab on things, minus that crucial information about when the timeline and maybe who the last third party is in that, being the designer. Who that is, that won't come out until later either.
Sure. All right. Another thing close to the vest. Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess for our audience, do you want to list those specific places where people can go to support and explore what you're doing?
Sure. I mean, all of it the fastest way to connect with any of those things would be through my website, bosleyart.com. But as soon as you get there, it's very easy to navigate to not only just my artwork in general, my blog, but also the Smoking Bones book, and then also very easily is uh, links to the Discord channel for Wits End, my own personal brand, and then the Wits End Patreon, where where there's lots of exciting little things going on. Yeah.
All right. I love it. Well, Andrew, I very much enjoyed our conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been the Tabletop Shop podcast featuring our special guest, Andrew Bosley. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more, please leave us a like and hit that subscribe/follow button to show your appreciation. Also, feel free to leave a comment to let us know what other special guest you'd like to see on the show. Thanks for stopping by the shop.